90% of people will spend their entire lives waiting to feel ready, and they'll die still waiting. Here's what's wild. The people who actually break through, they weren't more talented. They weren't luckier. They just knew something the rest didn't. There's a pattern, call it the chosen one's edge, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. What if the reason you feel stuck, overlooked, or like you're always almost there isn't a you problem? What if it's a knowledge gap? Stay with me. This one's going to hit different. Let me ask you something. Have you ever watched someone, maybe a coworker, a peer, someone you went to school with, and thought, why them? What do they have that I don't? It's not a jealousy thing. It's a genuine, honest question. Because from the outside, they don't seem smarter. They don't seem to work harder. But somehow, life just opens up for them. Doors swing wide. Opportunities show up. People trust them, follow them, invest in them. Meanwhile, you're doing everything right and still feel like you're pushing against a wall. Here's the truth nobody wants to say out loud. It's not about effort. It's about orientation. Chosen ones, and I don't mean this in a mystical way. I mean people who consistently rise, they see the world through a completely different lens. And today, I'm handing you that lens. Point 1, they've mastered the art of sitting with discomfort. Here's the developed version of your first section. Most people treat discomfort like a stop sign. The moment something feels hard, truly hard, not just inconvenient, but the kind of hard that makes your chest tighten and your mind search frantically for an exit, they leave. They don't always slam a door or make a dramatic choice. Most of the time, it's quieter than that. They pick up their phone. They tell themselves they're tired. They decide today isn't the right day, that they'll be better prepared next week, next month. Once things settle down, and things never settle down, they just find a new excuse that fits the season. This is not weakness, it's programming. The human brain was built to flag discomfort as danger, and for most of human history, that instinct kept people alive. But the world changed, and most people's relationship with discomfort never caught up. So now that same ancient wiring, the one designed to protect you from predators, fires every time you think about sending a difficult email, starting a business, telling someone the truth, or walking into a room where you don't know anyone. Your brain can't tell the difference between a threat and a challenge. So it treats everything uncertain like a threat. The chosen ones figured out the difference. They learned not from a book, not from a motivational speech, but from experience that discomfort is not a stop sign, it's a compass. And when you start reading it that way, everything changes. When something makes you uncomfortable, that's not a signal to stop. That's a signal that you're close to something real, something that matters, something that, on the other side of it, will have changed you in ways you can't fully anticipate yet. Think about every moment in your life that actually meant something. Not the comfortable afternoons, not the days everything went smoothly. Think about the moments that became stories, the ones you still carry with you. Your first real conversation with someone you ended up loving. The decision to start over. The risk you almost didn't take. The thing you said out loud that you'd been keeping inside for years. Go back to any one of those moments, and if you're honest, you'll remember that before it was meaningful, it was terrifying. Before it was beautiful, it was uncomfortable. Every single time. The average person doesn't see that pattern, or they see it and still can't make themselves move toward it. They're spending enormous amounts of energy, mental energy, emotional energy, the hours of their actual life engineering ways to stay comfortable, and what they're building, without realizing it, is a smaller and smaller world. Every avoided conversation is a wall. Every retreated from risk is a ceiling. The comfort zone doesn't stay the same size when you stop pushing against it. It shrinks. The chosen one is building something different. Not toughness for its own sake. Not some performance of being unbothered. What they're building is a tolerance, a genuine, practiced, hard-won tolerance for the feeling of not knowing how something will turn out and doing it anyway. They've made peace with a sensation of discomfort, the way a swimmer makes peace with cold water. It still registers. They still feel it. They just don't obey it. And here's what that practice actually looks like in a moment that counts. The urge to retreat rises fast, physical, convincing. The voice that says, not now, not today, you're not ready. And instead of following it automatically, they pause, just long enough to ask one question. Is this actually dangerous, or is it just uncomfortable? Those are not the same thing. And the moment you start telling them apart, you stop being managed by the feeling. You start managing it. If the answer is that you're not in danger, that the only thing threatening you is uncertainty, embarrassment, or the possibility of failure, then that discomfort isn't a warning. It's a direction. Walk toward it. Point 2, they don't wait for permission. Here's the developed version of your second section. Here's something that will quietly reframe everything once you see it. There is a waiting room that most people never leave. It has no walls, no chairs, no visible door, but it's real, and it's crowded. People spend years there, sometimes decades. They're dressed for the moment, capable of the thing, closer than they've ever been, and they're still waiting. Waiting for the nod, the signal, the moment when someone with more authority, more experience, more certainty looks at them and says, "Yes, you. It's your turn. We've decided you're ready." It feels reasonable from the inside. It even feels humble, like you're being responsible, not presumptuous, like you're respecting some invisible order of things. But what's actually happening beneath the patience and the preparation and the "I'm just not quite ready yet" is something more uncomfortable to name. You've handed your green light to someone else, and you're standing at the intersection, engine running, going nowhere, because a stranger is holding the switch. Watch how early this starts. A child raises their hand in class only when they're absolutely certain, because being wrong in front of others got coded as dangerous. A teenager shrinks their ambition to fit what their parents can imagine for them. A young adult takes the safer job, the more acceptable path, the dream with the edges sanded off because nobody around them confirmed the real one was serious. And slowly, without a single dramatic moment, the habit forms: I will move when I am chosen. I will begin when I am approved. I will take up space when someone tells me I've earned it. The tragedy isn't that people are lazy. Most people in that waiting room are working incredibly hard. They're preparing, improving, building their case. They're doing everything right except the one thing that actually breaks the pattern. Chosen ones figured out the secret, and it usually cost them something to learn it. They waited too. They looked around for the permission, felt the absence of it, and then at some point, in some moment that didn't look cinematic from the outside, they made a decision. Not a confident decision, not a certain one. They were often terrified, but they decided that if the permission was never going to come from outside, then it would have to come from inside. And they gave it to themselves. This is not arrogance. Arrogance is assuming you're better than others. This is something different, something quieter and more fundamental. This is self-authorization, the decision to treat your own judgment as legitimate, to stop requiring external confirmation before you act, to say, without waiting for applause, I am the one who decides whether I'm ready. And the moment that shift happens, something changes in how you move through the world. Because the world responds to people who have already decided. There's an energy that comes off someone who isn't asking for your approval. You felt it in other people, that particular quality of presence that makes you take someone seriously before they've said anything impressive. It's not loudness. It's not bravado. It's the absence of that faint, almost invisible pleading that most people carry. Please confirm that I belong here. When that's gone, something else fills the space. And people feel it before they can explain it. You cannot manufacture that energy while you're still outsourcing your green light. It only comes when you've genuinely, internally, stopped waiting. So here is the only question that actually matters right now. Where are you still waiting? Not in some abstract future version of your life right now, this week, in the area of your life where you keep almost moving and then stopping. Where are you holding yourself in place, telling yourself you're being careful, when the real truth is you're still waiting for someone to come along and choose you? Find it. Sit with that for a moment. And then ask yourself with complete honesty, what would I do today if I already had the permission? That answer, that's the move. Point 3, they think in decades, not days. There is a trap so well designed that most people never recognize it as one. It doesn't look like a trap. It looks like relief. It looks like the video you watch instead of starting the project. The purchase that feels like a reward for a hard week. The conversation you avoid because you're already tired and tonight isn't a good night. The decision to wait until Monday, until the new year, until you feel more like yourself. Each one of these moments feels like a reasonable choice. Each one delivers something real, genuine relief, genuine comfort, genuine pleasure. The trap is not that these things feel bad. The trap is that they feel good, immediately, every single time. And the brain learns fast. This is what instant gratification actually does at the structural level. It's not just distraction. It rewires your decision-making architecture. When you consistently choose the short-term reward even in small, seemingly harmless ways, you are training your nervous system to expect return on investment now. And once that expectation is deep enough, everything that doesn't pay off immediately starts to feel broken. The business that isn't profitable in month 3. The relationship that requires difficult conversations before it gets easier. The body that doesn't change in the first 2 weeks of showing up. Your own wiring starts to read these things as failures, as signs you should stop, as evidence that this particular thing isn't for you. And so almost everyone quits at approximately the same point. Not because they lack talent, not because the goal was wrong, but because the timeline their nervous system is running on was never matched to the timeline the goal actually requires. They're playing a 10-year game with a 3-month clock, and they keep wondering why they're losing. Chosen ones understand something about time that most people don't. Not intellectually, they feel it differently. They have genuinely restructured their relationship with delayed return. And the way that restructuring starts is deceptively simple. It starts with a question. Where do I want to be in 10 years? And what does the person who gets there do today? Not tomorrow, not in the abstract. Today, this morning, this afternoon, this particular Saturday when you could go either way. What does the version of you that actually arrives at that future do with this exact moment? That question is not motivational decoration. It is a cognitive tool. When you ask it sincerely and sit with it long enough to get an honest answer, it reorganizes your priorities at a level that willpower alone cannot reach. Suddenly, your morning routine is not about discipline, it's about identity. The hard conversation you've been avoiding is not a conflict, it's a debt you're paying down on behalf of your future. The Saturday you spend building something instead of recovering from the week is not a sacrifice, it's a vote for the person you're becoming. Everything looks different when you're making decisions from 10 years out instead of 10 minutes out. Jeff Bezos built one of the most valuable companies in history, and the mental framework he credits is almost embarrassingly straightforward. He calls it regret minimization. When facing a significant decision, he imagines himself at 80 years old, looking back and asks whether he would regret not trying. Not regret failing, not regret the difficulty, regret not trying, and if the answer is yes, he moves. Fear doesn't get a vote. Uncertainty doesn't get a vote. Current comfort doesn't get a vote. The only input that matters is the 80-year-old version of himself standing in the future, looking back at this exact moment. That is long game thinking in its purest form. And here is what people get wrong about it. They assume it's a personality trait, something you either have or you don't. The kind of thinking that comes naturally to visionaries and founders and people who were just built differently. But it's not a trait, it's a skill, which means it was developed, which means it can be learned, which means the only thing standing between you and that kind of thinking is practice, specifically the practice of making your future self real enough that their needs start competing with your present self's preferences. Right now, your future self has almost no power in your daily decisions. They're abstract, theoretical, easy to override with whatever is immediate and tangible and right in front of you. The work is making them concrete, giving them a face, a location, a daily life you can actually picture. Because once you can see that person clearly enough, once they're real enough, abandoning them starts to feel like exactly what it is. Start there, not with a 10-year plan, not with a complete overhaul. One habit, one thing that belongs to the future version of you, the one who actually made it, that you could start doing this week. Just one. Something small enough to be sustainable, but real enough to mean something. Because that habit is not just a productivity tool. It is a daily act of choosing the long game over the short one. And every time you choose it, the wiring shifts just slightly, just incrementally, until one day the long game stops feeling like discipline and starts feeling like who you are. Point 4, they've accepted that they are the variable. Here's the developed version of your 4th section. Let's talk about the story you've been telling. Not out loud, necessarily. Maybe never out loud. But internally, in the quiet narrative that runs beneath your daily life. The one that explains why things are the way they are. Why certain doors never opened. Why certain efforts didn't land. Why you are here and not somewhere else. Everyone has this story. Everyone is, at every moment, the author of an ongoing explanation for their own life. And the version of that story most people are telling without realizing it. Without choosing it, is a story where the most important events were caused by something outside of them. The economy shifted at the wrong moment. The right people never showed up. The circumstances were stacked in a direction that made it harder for someone like them. starting where they started with what they had. And here is the part that makes this genuinely difficult to confront. Sometimes that's completely true. Life is not fair. Opportunity is not evenly distributed. There are people reading this who faced real obstacles, not imagined ones, not excuses dressed up as obstacles, but actual structural, personal, painful disadvantages that shaped what was available to them. Acknowledging that is not weakness. Pretending it isn't real would be its own kind of dishonesty. But here is where the chosen ones make a move that changes everything. They hold both things at once, something most people find almost impossible to do. They can acknowledge that something wasn't their fault while simultaneously refusing to make that the end of the story. They've drawn a line, clean and deliberate, between fault and responsibility. And on their side of that line, they've placed everything. Not because they deserved every bad thing that happened. Not because the system was fair or the people around them showed up the way they should have. But because they made a decision, a radical, almost unreasonable decision that even when it's not my fault, it's still my responsibility. Read that again slowly, because it's easy to move past it without feeling its full weight. Even when it's not my fault, even when I was wronged, even when the circumstances were genuinely unjust. Even then, my responsibility, not to pretend it didn't happen, not to perform gratitude for things that hurt, but to stop waiting for the people or systems that created the problem to be the ones who fix it. To stop organizing your life around the expectation of an apology or a correction that is probably never coming. To pick up the situation, the damage, the disadvantage and say, I didn't choose this, and I'm the one who's going to deal with it. That is not toxic positivity. It is something harder and more honest than that. Toxic positivity tells you the obstacles aren't real. This tells you they are real and moves anyway. Toxic positivity is comfortable. This is not comfortable at all. In fact, the first time you genuinely apply this principle to your own life, to the actual situation you've been carrying, it can feel almost violent. Because what it requires is that you look at the story you've been telling, the explanation you've built, maybe over years, that accounts for where you are, and you interrogate your own role in it with the same honesty you've applied to everyone else's. That is the terrifying part. Here is the liberating part. The moment you accept that you are the variable, you also accept that you have the power to change the outcome. These are inseparable. You cannot have one without the other. As long as the cause of your situation lies outside of you and other people, in timing, in systems, so does the solution. You are, in that story, a bystander. Things happen to you. Change requires someone else to move first. But the moment you place yourself inside the equation as the constant, the one factor present in every scene of your own life, the leverage shifts entirely. Now change doesn't require the world to rearrange itself. It requires you to make a different choice. And you can do that today. You can do that right now. Think about the story you've been telling about one specific situation. Not your entire life. Just one. The relationship that ended and whose fault it was. The career that stalled and what caused it. The version of yourself you haven't become yet and what's been standing in the way. You know the one. The story you've told so many times to other people, to yourself, that it has grooves worn into it. It comes out smooth and practiced because you've lived inside it for a while. Now to the hardest thing. Keep every fact exactly as it is. Don't change what happened. Don't minimize what was done to you or pretend the unfair parts were fair. Keep all of it and rewrite only one thing. Your role. Not as a victim of the events, but as the protagonist moving through them. Someone with agency. Someone whose choices before, during, and after shaped the outcome alongside everything else. Someone who, from this point forward, is not waiting for the story to be corrected by outside forces. What does that version of the story look like? More importantly, what does that version of you do next? Point 5, they protect their inner world fiercely. Everything around you has an agenda. Not in a paranoid sense. Not in the way that requires a conspiracy or a villain. Just in the plain, mechanical sense that every system you interact with daily was built by someone, for a purpose, and that purpose is almost never your growth. The news cycle was built to hold attention, and attention is most reliably held by fear, outrage, and urgency. Social media was engineered by some of the most brilliant behavioral psychologists alive to maximize the time you spend on it, which means maximizing the emotional hooks that keep you scrolling. Comparison, validation, anxiety, the perpetual sense that something important is happening just one more refresh away. The people around you who drain your energy aren't necessarily malicious. But they are, often, unconsciously invested in you staying exactly where you are because your stasis confirms theirs. None of this is accidental. All of it is constant, and it is working on you right now, whether you're paying attention to it or not. This is the thing most people never fully reckon with. They think of their mind as something they own, a private space, sovereign and self-directed, and in theory, it is. But in practice, the mind is more like a house with every window open in a neighborhood that never sleeps. Things get in. They get in quietly, without announcement, without asking permission. A comment someone made 3 weeks ago that you're still turning over. The cumulative effect of 2 years of doom scrolling, absorbed in small doses that never felt significant. The friend who greets every one of your ideas with a variation of "yeah," but whose voice you've now internalized so thoroughly that you deliver the "yeah" but yourself before you've even finished a thought. You didn't invite these things in consciously, but they're in. And they're not decorating the space, they're slowly rearranging it. Chosen ones are, about this specific issue, almost obsessive. And from the outside, that obsession can look extreme. They turn off the news. They leave group chats. They stop spending time with people they've known for years. They're selective about what they read, what they listen to, what conversations they allow to continue versus which ones they exit. To people who haven't made this a priority, it can look antisocial, precious, like some curated, privileged relationship with reality that real people can't afford. But watch what they understand that their critics don't. They're not hiding from the world. They're not building a sanitized bubble where nothing difficult can enter. They travel through the same reality everyone else does. They know what's happening. They feel grief, frustration, the weight of things that are genuinely wrong. The difference is not what they're exposed to, it's what they grant access. There is a distinction, and it is everything. Exposure is sometimes unavoidable. Access is always a choice. And chosen ones have learned to guard that threshold with a seriousness that most people reserve for their physical safety, because they've understood something about how the mind actually works that most people only encounter as an abstraction. Your thoughts become your beliefs. Not the thoughts you choose consciously and deliberately. All of them. The ones that arrive uninvited. The ones you repeat without noticing. The background hum of assumptions about yourself, about what's possible, about how things generally go for someone like you, thoughts so familiar you've stopped experiencing them as thoughts at all and started experiencing them as reality. These thoughts, repeated long enough, calcify into beliefs. And beliefs are not passive. They are the operating system beneath every decision you make, every risk you take or don't take, every morning you wake up already knowing, somehow, how the day is going to go. Your beliefs become your actions, not through motivation or discipline or some act of conscious will, but automatically, inevitably, the way water moves downhill. You act in accordance with what you believe is true, what you believe you deserve, what you believe is realistic for someone in your position, every single day, without thinking about it. And your actions, accumulated over weeks and months and years, become your life. The whole thing. The relationships, the career, the bank account, the quality of your inner experience on an average Tuesday afternoon. This is the chain. And it begins with what you let in. Which means the most important question you can ask about your daily life is not about productivity or goals or strategy. It's about input. What is getting access to your mind right now, not theoretically, but actually, on a regular day, from the moment you wake up to the moment you stop? What are you reading? Who are you spending your hours with? What conversations are you allowing to live in your head long after they've technically ended? What version of yourself do the people closest to you reflect back at you? And is that version the one you're trying to become, or the one you're trying to leave behind? Most people have never done this audit seriously. They've thought about it. They've felt vaguely that certain things don't help, that certain people leave them feeling smaller, that the first 30 minutes of scrolling in the morning sets a tone for the day that they can never quite recover from. They've felt it and filed it away as a low-priority concern, something to address eventually after the more pressing things. But there is nothing more pressing, because everything else, the goals, the habits, the discipline, the long game thinking, all of it is being conducted inside a mind that is being shaped daily by inputs you haven't deliberately chosen. You cannot build a chosen life on a borrowed operating system. So start where you actually are. Not with a complete overhaul. Not with a dramatic announcement about what you're giving up and who you're becoming. Just with one honest look at what currently has access to you. What is in the daily rotation of your mind, and is it building the person you're trying to become, or quietly, consistently, invisibly dismantling them? Find the one thing that doesn't belong. The one input that you already know, if you're honest, is not paying rent in any meaningful way, that is only taking up space, only adding noise, only making the signal harder to hear. Cut it. Not forever, not as a statement, just cut it. This week, and notice what happens in the silence it leaves behind. Because that silence is not empty. That silence is yours. And what you choose to fill it with next, that choice, made deliberately, made from the inside out, is exactly where it begins. So here's the thing about chosen ones. Nobody chose them. They chose themselves over and over again. In the quiet moments when no one was watching, when it would have been easier to quit, when the results weren't there yet, when doubt was louder than belief. The gap between the people who seem destined for something and everyone else isn't talent. It isn't luck. It isn't some mysterious, unreachable quality you either have or you don't. It's a decision made daily to see differently, act differently, and refuse to hand your future to circumstance. You now know what they know. The only question is, what are you going to do with it? If this hit home, share it with one person who needs to hear it today. And if you want to go deeper, the next video is right there. I'll see you in it.